Welcome to the Contract Teardown Show from Law Insider, where legal experts tear down contracts from some of the most well-known companies and high-profile executives around the world.
In this episode, Alina Lee critiques an online sweepstakes agreement. So, let's tear it down. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Contract Teardown Show. I'm here with Alina Lee. Alina, how are you today?
I'm great.
We are having a conversation about a car, and it is a car like a Back to the Future car, and it's so awesome. And it's interesting, the context of this thing. This is a sweepstakes. I'm going to share the website that this comes from real quick with you guys, and also it's got one of these. If you click through, you can see the rules. Let me show you the rules real quick. Before we dig into it, Alina, what is this thing? When are we going to run into it?
So, as a common marketing tactic, a lot of companies nowadays will want to run these sweepstakes to promote their products or services, or just promote their company and get people excited, get social media activity. And right here, we've got a sweepstakes hosted by Audi Club North America, which is a 501c3 on this website, Rally Up, which provides sweepstakes platform for nonprofits.
Right. And before we get into the awesomeness that is this car and the details of how you go win it, tell us about you real quick, Alina. What's your background? What brings you to documents like this?
Great. My name is Alina Lee. I am the founding partner of my own law firm, Your Ad Attorney, LLC, ad short for advertising. I help companies with their marketing and advertising compliance, and I also have another DBA for my law firm called Your Tech Attorney. I also help a lot of tech companies with their day-to-day legal work as well. Today, of course, we'll be talking about the marketing law side. In addition to reviewing all your standard marketing campaign stuff, your TV ads, your radio ads, your landing pages, your digital ads, your email marketing, your text messages. I also draft and structure sweepstakes, giveaways, and contests for you. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. I work with a lot of different companies to help them structure these sweepstakes so that they stay legally compliant and limit their legal risk.
Cool. And this is, like, we as lawyers obviously know that advertising compliance can be tricky, because when I practiced in Texas, I had to send them like $75 as an aside, plus every communication I ever thought to have. So we know there's some compliance stuff, but this is an interesting context. I remember in like the mid Facebook days of 10 years ago, everybody wanted to, I'm just going to do a sweepstakes, and all these brands were doing sweepstakes, but it was creating a contract. So as we dig into this, we're going to look first at the front page of this experience for a consumer, which is on this Rally Up website. You mentioned that this is a bit of an aggregator for different sweepstakes, but this bit of marketing is a contract. It's creating a contractual relationship. So as we dig into this, talk to me about that. What is the nature of these kinds of sweepstakes agreements that turns them into a contract?
Sure. Basically, these are open offers which people can then accept during the term of the promotional period. So it is generally legally required that they are very upfront about when the offer expires. So the date that you have to, in this instance, enter into the drawing should be very clear and upfront. And as long as you meet the terms for, basically providing an eligible entry, then you're forming a contract with the party who's making the offer.
Got it. So offer acceptance, consideration. We're going to do all the cool law school stuff. Let's talk first about what you have to do, you, the consumer, what you have to do to get what you want. So take me on, I'm on the marketing side of it, on the front page type of experience here. Tell me about on here what it tells me I need to do to get something. What's my side of this agreement as a consumer?
Great. So as a consumer, you're like, wow, free car potentially? How do I get this? Well, when you scroll down on the page, you can see that there is a way that you can purchase entries, and there's different levels, and you can click one of these buttons and the program will take your credit card information and enter you into the sweepstakes for the number of entries that you purchased. You'll also notice that it says in several places, no purchase necessary. It's actually quite difficult to find where that is. In order to figure out how to enter for free, you do actually have to click into the official rules, read the official rules, find the specific link that provides you with the web page where you can then actually have to request a form that they then email to you, which you then fill out. So it is quite the process, and certainly quite varied.
Right. So I'm looking at the contract now, and it has a how to enter bit, which is, again, over to another link. So if I'm the consumer and I land on this page, I've now clicked more than one link to go figure out how to do this magical entry. And I'm looking at the bit of marketing material as sort of a contract cover page. Most of this page is not about the relationship between purchaser and seller. It's not about the steps that people have to take. That's all elsewhere. Most of this is a bit of marketing. It's a description of the actual product. Before we get into what you get, tell me about that. Tell me about this car and how this bit of marketing handles describing it, and how that might impact the nature of the sweepstakes. Tell me about the car. The car's awesome.
The car is great. I love this photo of the car. First off, they do describe the car in some detail here, and then they do have a link to see more specs, and there is a link there to see it. Normally in these types of sweepstakes, you do have to clearly disclose what the value of the car is. And I'm scrolling through this page now, and it is doesn't appear abundantly clear to me, actually. I had to find it when I clicked into the official rules to see, like, they believe the value of this car to be 60,000 United States of American dollars, which is a lot of money for a 1985 car.
And at the same time, still not enough. Look at that beast. It is sexy. There's going to be some car aficionado watching this episode that's like, that's an Audi 1985 Quattro Coupé sweeps. This is awesome. I love this thing. And I don't know.
There's only two in the world.
Yeah, this looks like my dad's car. Side note, I remember my dad had a Mustang at about this time, and it looked about like this. And we had this long driveway, and he used to drive, and I would get behind it because I saw Back to the Future, and I'd have skates on, and I'd hang on to the back of my dad's car while he went down our mile-long driveway. I used to get in so much trouble. It was awesome. When you think about that, Alina, and what this car could provide for you in a Back to the Future reenactment, is $60,000 even enough? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I mean, to some people, this is priceless.
That's a good memory. So, but when you're doing one of these sweepstakes, your point is, one thing that you have to do is, yes, describe what it is that you get. But then it sounds like you have to be really particular about the description of the value of that thing. How, when you're doing that, when you're giving away, for example, a service, right? Like, it's my time or whatever, I'm going to give you a free consulting session or whatever. How do you have to come to the determination of the value of these offerings? Any rules for that?
Yes. So the law, which again, it's a state-by-state basis for these sweepstakes laws, but in general across the United States, you do have to list the fair market value. So if this specific car were put, listed on, gosh, I don't know, was sold by any of these used car resellers,
right,
how much would the real retail value be? And it can't be higher than that, because what happens is if you list a retail value that is higher than the actual value, then, technically you do have to provide the difference in the value to the person who wins. So you could, in this case, they're claiming it's $60,000. If it is actually only worth $3,000, then you got to give the person the car, and then you potentially have to also pay them the difference, which is $57,000 or something of a similar value.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned that some states even require that you have a bond to back up your claim that it's worth $60,000. How do I go about getting that? What's the rules for that bond backup?
That's right. So in the United States, if you're running a sweepstakes that is where the total value of the prizes is over $5,000, then in New York and Florida, if it's open to residents in New York and Florida, you need to get a bond with the state and just require some additional paperwork and paying some fees. and more importantly, it takes a bit of time. And so that's where a lot of my clients kind of run into trouble, is they realize, they're under a lot of pressure to go ahead and run the sweepstakes in the next 2 weeks. Meanwhile, it's going to take over a month to get the bonds set up. So what they end up having to do is changing the prizes so it's under $5,000 or hiring a third party company that already has the bonds in place.
Gotcha. All right. Well, speaking of, I was thinking about the scope of the sweepstakes. You mentioned if it's open to people who play in Florida or whatever. How do you advise clients to make that decision in terms of who it's open to and how they restrict it? Obviously, you put something on the internet. Anybody landing on this page thinks it's open to them. Talk to me how you advise clients in terms of the scope of the thing and how you designate it in a way that doesn't get them in trouble later with the wrong state.
Sure. So a lot of times my clients do business internationally, and they also do business in many, many states. And so, every country has different laws when it comes to sweepstakes. And, I am only licensed to practice law in the United States. So I try to help my clients navigate the U.S. requirements. And then there are attorneys in other countries that can also advise on, what they can and can't do in other countries. But many other countries also require registering ahead of time, which requires hiring an attorney or a professional in that area to register for you. And so it's just important to make sure, depending on your audience, that you're clearly disclosing that it is limited to people in the United States. This particular offer is actually limited to the residents of the United States and Canada, excluding Quebec. And
it's the French Canadians. Every time it's Celine Dion coming in, trying to take my super awesome car that I'm going to do my Back to the Future reenactment on. Thanks, Celine. Yeah.
And you'll notice that's a really common thing, excluding Quebec, and it's because Quebec has a law that says you have to translate your marketing material into French if you want to make it available to their citizens. Although they did and they used to also require you paying a fee to the province of Quebec. And so a lot of people just started excluding Quebec because they didn't want to pay the fee, they didn't want to register, and they didn't want to translate it. Just last year, Quebec actually passed a law saying that they're no longer requiring the fee or the registration as long as it's international. So as long as it's open to people outside of Canada as well. But they didn't change the restriction on the translation. So I don't think they're getting the desired effect.
Yeah, apparently everybody in Quebec wants to be involved in this purchase as well. All right. Well, I want to talk to you about the big picture of using marketing and the way it creates contracts and the sort of conflict there. But before we get to that, is there anything else in the actual rules in the PDF document that we'll have attached that you want to underline?
Yeah, I do. So a few other things that are pretty important to keep in mind when you're doing these, especially if you're not a nonprofit, you're a for-profit company that is doing this, again, for marketing and advertising purposes. The whole point is marketing and advertising. So you'll want to make sure that your terms specifically call out that you can use the prize winner's name and photo and potentially quotes, because you'll want to continue your marketing campaign, right, to continue to get more buzz. And so these particular terms actually don't include anything about obtaining somebody's permission to use someone's name and likeness or quotes to continue the marketing activities afterwards. That would be a big problem. In general, in the United States, you're not allowed to use somebody's name, likeness, or quotes for business purposes, like for profit, without their consent. And actually, in Tennessee, there's a specific law that says that you cannot require people to sign a publicity release in relation to, as a requirement to redeem a sweepstakes prize. But in every other state right now, it is legal to require that they provide you with that permission before they can redeem the prize. So that's a big miss by Audi here if they are interested in, continuing the buzz after this is over. Also, a few pretty big misses in here. They did not list what the turnaround time is for responding. So usually the way this works is people enter, there's all these entries. As part of entering, you have to provide your email address, phone number, and then what you do is you do the drawing. It's usually several months later, and then you reach out to the person who won. But if the person doesn't respond, usually within like 2 to 4 business days, then you get to move on to the next person, and that first person's no longer eligible. And you can see why this is like important, right? Because you want to close out the sweepstakes, but if you never hear from the person and you didn't say like in the rules, you get 2 business days or you get 4 business days to respond, then you're kind of like stuck, right? You could potentially, if you did move on, you could potentially have to give the prize to more than one person. So that's a pretty big miss here. And then relatedly, delivery of the prize. Usually you want to be really clear to say that after all, you've been determined to be like the actual verified winner of the prize. The company has usually 6 to 8 weeks to provide usually mail the prize to you or deliver the prize to you. Here, they didn't say that at all.
Imagine winning this thing and you're the guy who didn't respond in 4 days. And so somebody else got your Quattro Coupé. Like that would be the worst.
That person would be like, well, actually, I'm the real winner here. Yeah. You didn't, So
I demand 2. I would like one in silver. Give me one in silver and one in red. Well, as we wrap up, I know when you're dealing with clients, again, I remember the day when people were just putting things up on Facebook real quick because they want this outcome, and it's a pretty effective marketing tool. But obviously, they come to you, and you're just like, rules, and they're like, we hate you. We're not doing this anymore, or we're not coming back. How do you think about these kinds of activities that have these compliance requirements and argue that these, your clients should still work on these? How do you talk clients through the decision-making process for using these kinds of tactics effectively?
I think it's not just like a pure legal argument, right? I think it's not very compelling to say like, well, technically it's illegal if you do what you're doing. I mean, it's true, but that's not a very compelling reason. I think the more compelling reason for my clients is reputational. So if you don't cover yourself, you don't clearly explain how it's going to work, and then basically, the winner is upset for whatever reason, they make a big splash about it in the news, right. That bad publicity is, you just turned a situation that was supposed to be positive publicity into bad publicity. And I think my clients are a lot more willing to spell things out and do things correctly when they realize it could be bad PR.
And I guarantee you the bad publicity will spread way better than whatever your sweepstakes was. That would be an awesome story. I lost my 1985 coupe that was going to change my life because this company's the worst. Yeah, that story will spread. Well, it's such sort of a niche thing, and yet one that all kinds of people get involved in because we're all on the internet. If people want to connect with you and learn how to use sweepstakes in their marketing in a way that doesn't get them in trouble but is effective, Alina, what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
So you can go to my website, which is youradattorney.com, youradAttorney.com. And you can also email me at alina@youradattorney.com. And Alina is spelled Alina.
Perfect. Well, we'll have that information along with the picture of this awesome car and the documents that are relevant over at lawinsider.com/resources. And if you want to be a guest on the Contract Teardown Show, just email us. We are at community@lawinsider.com. We would love to have you here to beat up some contracts. Alina, thank you for joining us, and we will see you all next time.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Contract Teardown Show from Law Insider. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show. We really appreciate it. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.